Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Podcast 2, Season 2. As always, I'm John, Yahya, or Sean. Depends on who the hell you're asking. This is
Chris.
And this is your voice, your nation. We are the blue collar workers. Thank you everyone for coming back. All 615 of you. Not a massive climb, but a lot of people don't tend to watch a lot of podcasts during the summer period. Me and Chris are expecting an uptick coming as the colder weather comes in and people want to sit down and watch things on the telly. But we've got quite a bit to go on for you today. There's a lot that's been going on in our political sphere here at home. For me, I've got Stemmer has had a climb down on disabled benefits cuts after rebellion by Labour MPs. That was the largest Labour rebellion he's suffered in his PMship, which puts him on a bit of a rocky road, really. Early US intel assessment suggests strikes on Iran did not destroy their nuclear sites, sources have said. We're going to get into that a bit further. UK is to expand its nuclear deterrence with US fighter jets capable of carrying tactical warheads. Those are smaller than ballistic missiles, for those of you who are unaware. Me and Chris are old enough to remember when tactical warheads were used in the 90s and then decommissioned. And the Palestinian Action Group to be banned, Home Secretary has confirmed. Over in Chris's side, we have...
Well, the RAF nuclear deterrent, he's obviously both covering that on different aspects today. Is Stammer heading out the door due to the rebellion that's happening within his party? And sepsis becoming an issue within NHS hospitals, whether they're actually able to spot it. And a semi-big piece for me today on men's mental health, since it is Mental Health Month for men.
It is indeed. So, I mean, as always, welcome back. Thank you for subscribing. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Please hit that like button. You know, all these little bits help. They've allowed us to grow our channel to where we are. We're very thankful to all of our subscribers, all of our supporters. Thank you, as always, coming back. I think we'll start with the nuclear deterrence, to be honest. I think that's a big part of current Western news. Early US intel assessment suggests... that's my Iranian one. Wrong one. The UK to expand nuclear deterrence with US fighter jets capable of carrying warheads. The UK is to substantially expand its nuclear deterrent by buying a squadron of American-made fighters jets that are capable of delivering US tactical warheads. Remember, Britain doesn't have any tactical warheads anymore. Our main deterrent is on our submarines out at sea, and that are likely to be stored on British soil. The announcement by Keir Starmer at the NATO summit marks the most significant change in British nuclear position since the end of the Cold War, and the US bomb set to return to the UK and is bound to provoke alarms amongst arms controllers and campaigners. We live in a different world than we did when Donald Trump came to power. And I mean, I think that's an important factor. Russia has gotten more aggressive. Iran and Israel are firing at each other. Pakistan and India are literally kicking shit out of each other over Kashmir. The world is not the same since Donald Trump came back to power. So the brickmanship that existed in the world order requires reinforcement. And though I am not a fan of nuclear armaments, I do believe deterrents, which are smaller nukes, you know, like the tactical nukes, are smaller nukes, are better than us wiping out fucking cities with ballistic missiles.
So they're more precise.
They're more precise. They're battlefield destroyers. They kill armies on the battlefield. That's the general idea behind tactical nuclear weapons. And I think it is a good counter move to Putin. And I genuinely do think that the West, especially Western Europe, has been really kind of thinking Russia is just this kind of like sleeping tiger that's never going to bother them. And I think they've given this kind of... there is a considerable amount of disrespect that's happened to the Russians that has been absolutely unnecessary. People have thought that Russia wasn't capable of actually doing things. And now that Russia is, right or wrong, I don't agree with the invasion of Ukraine, but I don't agree with what Zelensky's done to you see, one of the things that we come back to the Ukrainian conflict, Chris, is many people quickly forget why the Ukrainian conflict started. Yeah? NATO being on Russia's direct border. I mean, we need to emphasize this point. Now, admittedly, Joe Biden and the neocons have already run away, so the opportunity for Ukraine is never joining NATO. There's no scenario where Russia will accept that and Europe can demand it. Okay, under America's first policy with Donald Trump, we are not going to see Ukraine expanded into NATO. It's not going to happen. Finland, yes, because Finland's an old country that's been a part of the Scandinavians. That's an understandable position. Europeans could probably verbally kick the shit out of Donald Trump over the chances of Finland and Norway and those Baltic, the Baltic and Scandinavian countries physically joining them. These are the realities that Donald Trump can't avoid. But Ukraine is directly on the border and has caused no end of headache to the Russian, because there's a large Russian population there. Something like 30% of them speak Russian, live Russian.
Well, since we're on the border, it's naturally that there's going to be a bit of
of course
crisscross.
But
so.
we shouldn't be there. NATO shouldn't be there.
I think that was Trump trying to stamp. Trump, or was it?
No, it was Biden. Biden was
trying to stamp his authority somewhere.
Yeah, no. And I mean, it backfired because it's left us in a mess. And I do hope Donald Trump can close off these wars. He claims he's a peacemaking president. I hope he is. I hope he is the isolationist he says, because the world will be better off if he is. Under the plan, the UK will buy 12 F-35 jets, which are capable of carrying conventional munitions, and also the US B-16-112 gravity bomb, a variant of which has the explosive power of more than 3 times the weapons dropped on Hiroshima. But they're guided weapons, that's the thing. So these are the kind of weapons you take out fucking...
To be quite honest, I was waiting for this to actually pop back up anyway.
Was it?
Due to the fact, obviously, Trump withdrawing from the EU, like his influence and whatnot, and Russia and Ukraine going on, plus everything with Israel and all that lot. I was waiting for us to turn around and actually step our...
Yeah, we were going to. It was inevitable, because we are one of the 2 nuclear powers in Europe.
Yeah. So I was waiting for us to... Because obviously we have got a very decent one in our subs and whatnot at sea, which never have to refuel and everything else.
It's nearly 200 nuclear ballistic missiles.
Yeah. That's good, but
those are country killers. We need the idea behind this is they're used to take out armies.
We need something which is, as I call, a warning shot. We've eliminated your army. Now pack it in, or we'll get the big boys to wipe you out.
So I mean, the idea behind tactical weapons is to counter the tactical weapons that Russia has tactical weapons. Russia is the 2nd largest nuclear stockpile in the world. Barring none. Let's not kid ourselves here. Russia still has the 2nd largest nuclear stockpile planet-wide, just shy of America. I mean, China's is closer to Europe's than it is to fucking America and Russia.
Yeah, but I don't want to be messing with China because they're so precise. They'll turn around within a couple, go, and you're gone.
The Chinese ballistic systems aren't as good as you think they are. They're not. They haven't got the range, I think, to affect us in Europe. That's an important factor. I think, now I might be completely wrong about this, I think the Chinese ballistic system is genuinely Asia. Do you know what I'm saying? It goes as far as India or Pakistan. I don't think the Chinese have a ballistic system that can hit us in Europe or mainland America. I might be wrong.
I'd say as far as we're aware anyway, because they're Secret Service, you don't even know the location of them.
True, yeah. I mean, I don't know a vast amount of the Chinese ballistic, but the Chinese ballistic system is very advanced, as Chris has just pointed out, and they have very few a number of nukes. I think between the Chinese have about what we in France have combined.
Yeah, but they're I'm not going to lie, I'm sorry, but the Chinese people are smarter than us. Yeah.
Call a spade what a spade is, mate. Yeah.
I'm afraid they'll turn around to be extremely tactical with their strikes, and literally it'll disable us quite considerably. Unless we actually have someone of equal intelligence.
I think the fact that people underestimate the laser tanks, and I think that's a development that's going to lead towards
that is the future.
That's the development that's going to end ballistic weaponry. Once that technology reaches a point where where those laser tanks can be used,
and I want us to be the first ones to utilize the gear things.
Well, we built them, of course.
It doesn't mean we'll be the first to utilize them.
Probably not. In an era of radical uncertainty, we can no longer take peace for granted. Stemmer is expected to say. These aircrafts will strengthen our armed forces and support communities across the country through our defensive industry. The US nuclear weapons have not been stored in the UK since they last left RAF 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿𝐵 in 2008. I think those were only the nuclear depth charges. The actual big bombs left earlier than that. Whilst Britain has not had its own air-launched nuclear weapons since 1998, when the WE-177s were scrapped by the Labour government, they were very old systems. Okay, that was in '98 that Tony Blair was scrapping them. Those were probably built in the '80s and '70s. They weren't fit for purpose in the points. Since then, the new UK nuclear deterrent has been delivered solely via a Trident submarine fleet, whose warheads carry the explosive power to destroy a city. But military planners say that they need to be sub-strategic capability that could be employed on battlefields to deter an attack or by Russia on NATO allies. The F-38s will be the basis of RAF Marhem in Norfolk and will join NATO's dual capacity aircraft DCA program. Part of the alliance's long-standing strategic to deter adversaries with a shared US-led nuclear umbrella. So basically, we're sticking nuclear bombs on British-born F-35s, I think it's F-35s, F-35As, and British pilots running them. And their job is to strike down invading massive armies. And they're far more strategic. And I'm not normally a person who prolificates nuclear technology, but in the current political climate, I think they're necessary.
We do need that deterrent.
Because I don't like the idea of city destroyers. I don't want to destroy that much life.
Now, the fact that we got something which could turn around and just be precise in targeting certain things, and then if that doesn't work, we have got the big boys sat in the back ready to go, I think is enough of a deterrent for anyone to consider. I
mean, Russia has its own tactical nuclear weapon systems. Yeah. Britain didn't. We got rid of it, like in the '90s, back when we were teenagers.
But now we're putting them back in place. Well, Russia. Well, I'm hoping Russia will be like, okay.
I've never had this conclusion where Western power has been moaning about, Russia's going to invade Europe. I don't buy that. I think the Russians are smart enough to know that France and Britain would do something about it. Then
the rest would follow.
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? I don't think the Russians are highly intelligent people, even though they're coming from a crumbling old power, and Russia isn't the power she used to be in the 50s and 60s and 70s. She's just not. Most of her artillery equipment, weapons, they're all very aged. Most of it was built before 2000s, including their tanks, APCs, a shitload of their equipment. But they are still a power, and people need to not forget that. Okay, just because they're an aging power that aren't the Soviet Union of old, they are still a major power in the European sphere.
And enough to cause issues.
Absolutely. But I don't buy that they were ever going to invade Poland or any other major European country. They might.
Is it Poland the one that stockpiled everything?
Fucking Poland's military is fucking huge right now. Poland has got one of the largest ground armies in Europe, and I'm including Russia in that equation.
Yeah, Russia ain't invading Poland.
Regardless of our nuclear deterrence, I don't think the Russians had intent to invade Poland anyway.
I'll tell you, I think it was more, as you said, due to the fact that NATO
creeping up on fucking goddamn Ukraine's border. I think the reality is that the Ukrainians are going to have to make a severe deal with Russia. I don't think Russia can swallow the Ukraine. I don't think it's possible of doing it.
It needs to come to a peace.
I think a chunk of Ukraine is going to be taken away by Russia. I think that's inevitable. I don't think anybody in the Western powers can really do anything about it. Donald Trump has very anti-long-term wars. He's a kind of strategical, bomb, go away, talk, wag finger. That's Donald Trump. He does not want to put boots on grounds anywhere. And without boots on the grounds, the Ukrainians are not getting their country back, the full length of their country. They've lost the East. It's a brutal analysis. But without European foot soldiers, our people, going into Ukraine to fight the Russians, I do not see the Ukrainians being able to.
That would start World War III.
Not necessarily. Putin isn't crazy. Remember, every time a nuclear threat has come along, it's been the Russians that have backed off. Like the Cuban Missile Crisis over in Cuba, the Russians backed off. The fail-safe system that went off in the 60s and 70s, the Russians backed off. It's always been the Russians that... See, this is why I don't like this Western media point that the Russians are the bad guys. They're not. They're very sensible human beings. And they need to be mentioned as very sensible human beings because most of our actual nuclear crises, where we've come very fucking close to nuclear war, it is the Russians that have always backed off. That's the point I want to mention. And I think from a historical point of view, that needs to be laid bare, especially when you're coming from a nuclear deterrent point of view. Every nuclear deterrent decision we've come to, and there's been the butting of heads of the West versus Russia, Russia has been the one that's backed down for the safety of humanity. And they've been proven right for doing it too. Because the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world could have been dead before we were born. And we would have been babies the second time that had the failsafe system. Do you know what I'm saying? So the Soviet Union and the Russians have always been the ones that have actually turned, they're going like, well, let's see if this really is going to kick off. And then realise fail-safe systems, etc., etc. And the Americans and the West have pulled back because the Russians have given them the space to do so. So I'm not buying this fact that if we went to defend Ukraine, we need an entire European front to do it. Poland would never agree. Hungary would fucking throw a fit. I don't even think the hawkish French would be eager to the idea of invading.
I don't even think we'll be eager to the idea of it. We'd be like, well,
I don't think our country's got the military means to do a ground invasion at this point.
It wouldn't be a grand invasion. If we was to get involved, it wouldn't be a grand invasion.
We'd have to use our air and navy, to be honest, as support for everyone else. So if the French are not getting involved, the Germans don't have an army. Poland has no interest in helping you militarily on the ground in Ukraine. They've got no taste for it because they want to preserve as much as they can for themselves. Because they literally are on the Russian border.
They'll only get involved if everything kicks off.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair point to hold. Much of these decisions, warnings in the early strategic defence review about rising global instability and renewed nuclear threats. The Defence Secretary, John Harlid, said that the announcement reflected a NATO-first strategy and used defence as a growth engine for the UK's economy. In essence, the world is less stable than it was. And because of that instability, with all the conflicts that are going on, there's more flare-ups in Africa. I don't think people don't talk because we've got such going on in Europe. Yeah. We don't talk what's going on. There's shit going on in Africa. There's Congo slaughters going on. There's failed peace agreements. There's militias. It's just fucking nightmare in Africa right now. So Central Africa, not the peripheries. They're going quite well. South Africa's doing well. Somalia is starting to calm down from what I can tell. So, I mean, the world has an instability problem. Myanmar's on the verge of collapse. There's another thing. Yeah, Myanmar. Burma, as many of the older generation will remember. Burma, or Myanmar as it's more commonly called, is on the verge of collapse. The military junta of Myanmar is virtually falling apart. There are so many rebel and militia groups that are in there that I don't think that Myanmar's going to be a functioning country in the next 5 to 10 years.
That one's surprising.
And that's a big Asian country. Let's not kid ourselves about the size of Myanmar. But yeah, I mean, let's move on to what you've got for your nuclear deterrent side, Chris.
You've literally covered most of it already. You literally have. Every single point I had.
Oh, okay.
Second truth, I was chipping in every now and
again. Yeah. But I mean,
you covered that.
The deterrentable system.
Yeah. Oh, one part you didn't mention it would create 20,000 new jobs.
Oh, so you see, I mean, arms industries, I'm not a fan on them creating, but 20,000 new jobs is definitely needed, especially in the stagnant British economy.
It seems it's something that's going to be a deterrent / help defend our country. I think that's...
Oh, well, it's more our NATO allies. Yeah. I mean, I don't buy that. You see, there's a lot of the local rags, the Daily Mail, they were talking about how Britain, an old defence minister said Britain could be invaded. I don't buy that for a second. With the nuclear deterrents we have at sea, there is no way Russia or any other country would genuinely risk the idea of a land invasion in Britain. I don't buy that for a fucking second. This is the war hawks wanting to recruit more money, get more money.
I was thinking it's a case of the fact that just the deterrents in general will help keep Britain safe.
Yeah, there's
if it creates 20,000 new jobs at the same time. Win-win.
I guess we're middle-aged men who see the more longer picture, because that is not always an easy thing to discuss when you talk about militarization.
It's something that's going to help protect our country within the long run, not short term, long run. Yeah, I think of the bigger picture is people which have very short binoculars vision.
No nuclear weapons, no nuclear proliferation. Unfortunately, we don't live in that kind of stable life anymore. The world is far more fragile.
You need to look at the bigger picture, not the small one that you try to keep charping on about. It will create more jobs, which will increase the future of
and increase stability.
Yeah, increase the safety and stability of Britain, not just now, but in the long run as well.
To be fair, I think we should build our own tacticals as well. I don't even think we should be just purchasing America or loaning Americas. We should be building our own tacticals.
I thought it was just a case of fact we're just buying the jets off.
No, we're buying the jets, but the nukes are American because we don't have tactical. We don't have tactical nukes. We have ballistic, but we don't have tactical.
Well, we can start off with. We can buy them, start off with, and build our own and stick our own on there.
I don't know how much it would cost Britain to build its own tactical program, mate. It's not going to be cheap, and STEMMA's real tight with money at the moment.
As I said, that's a long-term goal.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Palestinian actions are going to be banned by the Home Secretary, as confirmed. Imogen James, BBC News, and Ellen Price, BBC News in central London. The Home Secretary, 𝐬𝐻𝐾𝐿, has said she will be prescribing Palestinian action under anti-terror laws. They're a protest group who, yes, break into arms factories and paint vehicles, but they are not causing terror. That is a step too far. Okay, it really is. The very if you read what the terrorist act is and what terrorism is, there is a disconnection. The British political establishment are using this as a club against, yes, criminal. I'm not agreeing with the criminal damage.
I think I know why they're sticking the terrorist word in there, because they have the potential to take what they're breaking into to cause harm.
There's no proof. The Palestinian actions are only going
in this day and age. You really willing to take that risk?
Chris, I think that declaring activists who are trying to stop an innocent people being slaughtered as terrorists is a bit farther than it needs to be. These aren't people who are wanting to cause war. These are people who are trying to stop war. Remember the type of group that we're talking about. The Palestinian actionists want to stop wars. They're not the kind of people who want to grab weapons.
There's only one thing I've got to say to those people. Stop breaking into places.
Yeah, it's criminal. Yeah, just charge them as criminals.
Which contain stuff that could be used against us. And then you won't have the T word thrown at you.
You see, the more effective brands the group's a terrorist organisation, and if passed in Parliament, would make membership and support of the group illegal. Palestinian action calls the government's action unhinged and disgraceful. I happen to disagree. I do believe that the group needs to be punished. Let me be frank. You don't break into a military base, even as a Muslim who's a supporter of Palestine. You don't break into a military base and not expect some fucking responsibilities for it. Do you know what I'm saying? But calling an active group who is trying to stop other people being murdered in tens of thousands, terrorists, is a step too far.
Are you really surprised by the reaction though?
Yes, because it's a Labour fucking government.
I'm not surprised by the reaction, because if you come to think about it, I know they're an activist group trying to prevent harm and everything else, but they've gone and aimed at something that they shouldn't have done anyway. And they're wondering why they got the T word thrown against them, because it's a military base which contains stuff which could harm humanity. Instead of trying to break into it, protest outside of it, why was the need to be broken into it? Because that has only damaged your own cause and being the T word thrown at you.
But then look at the statement. In the statement, Palestinian Action said the real crime here is not the red paint being sprayed on those warplanes. That's all it was. They've broken in, they've spray painted the vehicles, Chris. They're not damaging the vehicles. Other than, I wouldn't call spray painting a vehicle. Yeah, that's a paint job. That's an afternoon work for a fucking mechanic. That's not that bad. They're not criminally damaging.
It depends on the type of spray paint they use, because after time, most spray paints you can wash off and nothing happens.
Yeah. They're teachers, they're nurses, they're students, they're parents, Chris. These are not people looking to harm British society or any society. These are people who are... So, like I said, the terrorists, punish them, yes, because they've broken into a military base.
Then spray paint the building. Why do you need to go along and break into the building and spray paint the equipment?
They're trying to make clear of what these planes are doing.
Yeah, I can understand that.
These planes are spying to murder women and children.
Yeah, I can understand that the planes are being used in potentially the wrong purpose. And I get the message you're trying to go for, but going in and breaking into a military base which has stuff that can harm human life in order to try to prove a point is only going to, in this day and age, get the T word thrown at you.
I don't think it'll be passed in Parliament, personally. I think it'll
be thrown out, naturally.
I suspect, even if it does get thrown in Parliament, I'm pretty sure the Supreme Court's going to challenge that, because it's such a loose application towards...
It'll be thrown out straight out of the back. I know it will. They've damaged their own cause.
No, I'm not denying that. I'm not denying they haven't damaged their own cause, because they have broken into a military base. Yeah. But the reality we're looking at here is that people are desperate. They want to stop the murder of women and children in the Middle East. This has been going on since October last fucking year, Chris. We've almost had an entire year of this monstrous.
They're trying to do that, but what they've just done is done more harm to their cause than good. Yeah,
here we have a centralist.
That's the point I'm trying to put across. Yeah, the fact that it's not the fact that they've turned around and broke into a place which contains stuff which can kill, in order to prevent killing by spray painting whatever message on it, when they could have portrayed that message by writing it on the building. Most people would have paid attention to the message on the building and actually literally listen to you, than you breaking in and spray painting on the equipment used, because people are now going to go under, well, hang on, if they spray paint it, what's stopping them picking up that firearm and taking it with them?
Because it's a giant fucking plane. They're specialised to train to use them.
Yeah, that doesn't mean there isn't pistols and everything else within that warehouse.
I doubt that. No. The British Army's a bit better controlled than that, Chris. The planes are massive things. It was sat on a tarmac. And what they've done is they broke in, they painted over it, and then they fled. That's literally what they've done.
They chose the wrong target straight off the bat.
I agree to disagree. I think it has highlighted the fact that Britain is, like I said, we're having this conversation because that. If they just spray painted a military base wall, that wouldn't have wouldn't have even been the third page of a fucking newspaper.
Still would have been in the newspaper. And most people read past the third page of the newspaper, which then would have got the message.
I disagree. The fact that it's a front page message,
or gone for more high, go for another high target, which doesn't involve breaking into a military base.
For the desperate, 90% of the time,
how desperate you are.
No, Chris,
crossing that line will harm your cause better than it will do anything else.
I understand the illegality from point of view. I understand your grievances that saying that, look, you're doing damage to yourself. What I'm trying to get at is tens of thousands of women and children are being slaughtered. And that is a definition by the International Court as a genocide. So you're going to find pushback from civic society against us being involved in that horrible fucking event. And I mean, you have said yourself multiple times we shouldn't be involved.
No, we shouldn't be involved.
No. And so I want to make a point on the fact that we are involved. Britain is aiding and abetting Israel in what it's doing right now.
I'm sorry, but we should be stepping back and stepping out.
Exactly. So these people are desperate. So there's got to be mitigation. Yes, they've broken the law. Punish them from breaking the law. I get that. But terrorism, too far, in my opinion. Chris disagrees with me. And that's the beautiful thing about it.
No, hang on. I didn't disagree with you. I said they've turned around and got the T word thrown at them because they've stepped over a line. There is a difference.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Throwing the T word when you haven't caused any harm to human life, that's an entirely different subject. But you've damaged your cause by stepping over the criminal line.
Okay, no, I can agree with that. We can come to a consensus on that. They have broken the law. They've broken into a military base. That is illegal.
To rise above what is going on, you must not dip below what they have done.
Yeah. I mean, but in today's society, Chris,
that means breaking the law. That means you stay above it, stay above the law. That way, they can't question your morals. Unfortunately, everything's going to go out the window because you stepped the line.
I don't think it'll pass Parliament though. And there are MPs already speaking, like Nadia Widdowson, Labour MP for Nottingham East, said that this move misuses of the use of terrorist-related powers and erodes the trust that the public has put in our anti-terror rules. Do you know what I'm saying? This should be solely for when people are actually committing acts of terrorism. And I think 𝐸𝐵 is going to have to drop that one because there are going to be enough Labour MPs that say you can't really do that.
Maybe breaking and entering vandalism.
Oh yeah, no, completely. Legally speaking, they've broken the law. I'm no supporter of breaking the law, even though I fight in the corner of the Palestinians, and I do. Me and Chris both say Britain should not be involved in this business.
But if we ain't involved, there's nothing to come back on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what benefit is there on it? It's not. There's no benefit for either side.
Yeah, the MP
is purely a personal grudge match.
Yeah. I mean, I don't agree with that. I think that there is innocent people whose land's been stolen for the last 80 years by settler colonialists, and I'm unapologetic about that. But we should all be concerned about plans to prescribe Palestinian action as a terrorist group. It sets a dangerous precedent which governments in future could further use against their critics.
You've literally just proved my point. You've just damaged your own cause by the actions you just done.
Yeah, but
in that single sentence.
No, but she's talking about them being described as a terrorist group.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The fact that you've broke in and they've thrown the T word at you, it's now just literally destroyed your cause. I'm sorry, but in this day and age, as soon as that T word is thrown out, despite how good your intentions are, yeah, even though you broke the law to do it, has just undermined your cause. Because now that T word is now associated with that group. Every time that group comes up, what's now going to be thrown at them? Yeah.
Yeah, no, the media, people like GBN News and stuff like that.
This is what I'm going on about. You've destroyed your own cause by doing an act of criminal activity, which they've decided to throw the T word against you. And I'm sorry, but the T word is as effective as dropping a nuclear bomb in a city.
Well, in terms of politics,
In terms of politics, yeah. As soon as you got that associated with your group name, game over.
You see that's wrong though, Chris. Unless you've acted as an act of terrorism, you shouldn't be. There should be. You see, this is why the runaway powers of Parliament need to be drawn in, because Parliament gave them to protect us, but they didn't give them to them for us to be abused. What happens when the Conservatives do something? Let's be hypothetical. We take disagreements of a future Nigel Farage government there's a possible fucking chance that cunt could run a government. What happens if we're called terrorists? Do you understand? We're podcasters. We are directly political podcasters.
I would love to know how you're going to turn around and stick the charge of terrorism on us.
Yeah, but that's what that's the devil's advocate I'm trying to make, mate. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's the devil's advocate, which unfortunately does exist at the moment. It is something we must all come to realise and process in our thoughts before we take action. I'm sorry, I know this is aiming at the more intellectual side of humanity, and I know that some of them are going to be like, huh? What do you want about? Yeah, but use that brain of yours. Oh, hang on, if I do this, will it cause more harm than good? Is there a better way to go about it? I can understand you're in a desperate measure to try and stop the horrendous acts that are going on in that area at the moment, but you've done something which somebody's able to turn around and throw the T word against you, and now it's just undermined your entire goal.
I think that this damages the political stance of Parliament and government by the act of calling it's a criminal action. I'm not defending the criminal action, but to call them terrorists for painting a spy plane that was being used for intel for Israel to murder women and children, I don't think that warrants a terrorist charge whatsoever. And the Labour MPs need to push back on that.
But then, as you said, terrorism charge comes in the fact of act of harming human life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they harm human life by spray painting the paint? No. Did they commit a crime in order by breaking into a military base and everything else? Yes. Unfortunately, they are going to face consequences for that. But they've tried portraying their message in such a way that it has caused more damage to their message than it has good.
It is the use or threat of serious violence against a person or personages designed to influence the government or intimidate the public, and for the purpose of advancing a political, religious, racial, or ideological cause. So, yeah, all right. In the technical legal term, yeah.
They may have a point there.
Yeah,
because that legal term.
Yeah, because the military vehicle is part of government property.
Yeah, government property, yeah.
So, I mean, it's a bit hard. I don't think when you're painting a vehicle, you're not actually damaging the vehicle greatly, are you? You're not stopping it from working.
But who owns the vehicle?
The government. Yeah. But it's not. But it wasn't a threat or serious violence against. I wouldn't call that a threat or use of violence. Vandalism is not violence.
That's where it gets sticky.
I'm just saying, vandalism is vandalism. It is a criminal charge, definitely. Yes, it's on a military base. They were very fucking stupid to do that, honestly, opinion. Maybe Chris's approach of painting the back of the wall or the civilian side of the building would be a justifiable response. I think he has a point. But
what would have been a more sensible response?
Yeah. Yeah. Something expletive towards our political leaders might have gotten attention a little better. But I fundamentally think that using the Terrorist Act like this endangers discourse in the UK.
I have a distinct feeling a banner painted, a banner with your message writ across it, and it being waved in front of the Parliament, or even the Palace or whatever, somewhere important in London, would have got your message across better than committing a criminal act.
Possibly. I think the Palestinian actions probably didn't think through the consequential positions. But to say that it was an act of terrorism, I think is a bit far. I wouldn't have thought that they would have been called for an act of terrorism, Chris. I wouldn't have thought that would have been a normal response.
On first initial read of, they've broken into military base and spay-painted a plane, you would have think damaged property and breaking and entering.
Yeah.
But as you just read the description of a terrorism, if the government's got a good lawyer, they could pin that on them.
I don't think Parliament's going to agree to it because it is just criminal damage. The plane is still serviceable. Do you know what I'm saying? The plane can still take off.
It's in that sticky territory.
Anyway, what do you got on your side, old boy?
This carry on government thing. It's that one. Lovely. Keir Starmer out. PM on edge as rebel Labour MPs demand regime change.
See, that's changed. I've got similar to that today.
Yeah. The PM his time abroad, swanning about looking important. That's fancy foreign summits. I'm sorry, but that sentence just refers to us basically be a brilliant
foreign secretary. We have said that, or chancellor, someone who makes money.
Yeah,
he's not PM.
He's barely set foot on home soil in weeks. Yesterday, for the second time in a row, Angela Rayner stood in for him at the Prime Minister's questions. Tory Shadow Councillor Mel Stride quipped, "It was good to see Rayner standing in again." I think that there may be they are many sitting behind her who wish this was a permanent arrangement. That's a discussion for another time.
The rebellion issue involving what's going on right now has been just climbed down today because what I've got as a follow-on from Chris's point is the climb down on the disabled benefits. Carry on.
The PM enjoys the prestige of foreign summits, but is less keen on facing angry voters at home. I'm sorry, but if you're the PM, you've got to deal with home before you deal with foreign affairs.
Absolutely.
Increasingly, he can't face his own party either. He's now under siege from the very Labour MPs who won their seats during last year's landslide. They're rebelling over Starmer's plans to cut disability benefits. More than 120 Labour MPs have signed a fatal amendment designed to kill off the welfare reforms altogether. They say the measures will strip help from 800,000 vulnerable people, including those who struggle to wash or dress. That is not what they joined Labour. Why they joined Labour.
And I happen to absolutely agree with these MPs. This is a very human response. We have, and I reiterate this when me and Chris mention it all the fucking time. You have to fix the tax system to really look after your people. You've got to fucking change the tax system that the UK uses. You've got to rewrite the tax system so the fair share is burdened, including corporate. Corporates do not pay tax. They avoid it like a plague. And that has to stop. We have to stop letting corporations avoid tax.
They need to pay it.
Yeah. And this would solve many of our actual aging population issues. This would solve it. Fix the tax system, fix the country. It's not even a bad fucking slogan.
No. The next little thing. As crisis grew, Starmer was in his well-appointed NATO bunker. It must have felt
straight off of our having a conversation about fucking nukes.
Labour rebels claim they don't want him gone, not yet, but they are gunning for his inner circle, especially Morgan McSweeney, the PM's chief of staff, and election fixer and hapless Chancellor Rachel Reeves. They're after him.
The problem I've got is I like Reeves. I don't think she's done a bad job. When we talk about the individual, that guy, I don't even know him, the previous guy you mentioned.
Morgan McSweeney. I haven't even heard him in the freaking press.
No, you see what I'm saying? So this man is like he's one of them backroom people, one of them backroom fixers. Rachel Reeves, I don't think has done a bad job. I think
some of her choices have been questionable.
Yeah, but Christopher, look at what she came back from. Look at what the Conservative we just had.
Yeah,
the nightmare Conservative 14 years we've had previously. She's had some questionable choices because she's had to fix the holes. She's still staying in the same tax system.
If McSweeney or Reeves fall, Starmer becomes a hollow man, just a puppet leader held aloft by the left. he'll be in Downing Street, but effectively out of power. He knows it too. That's why number 10 is now scrambling to make concessions. He's made a personal appeal to backbenchers, begging them to relent, but it may not be enough to buy off the revolt. At last count, 123 Labour MPs were backing the amendment. That's enough to wipe out the government's majority in the Commons. He might then face the nightmare of a non-confidence vote. Labour heavyweight David Blunkett warned the government could crash into crisis if the PM presses on and loses. But any U-turn will scream weakness and destroy Chalmers' chances of pushing through further reforms.
Absolutely, but to be fair, these reforms are deeply unpopular. You have to fix the fucking tax system. And I keep saying this, because it is very, very true. Our tax system robs the British people of agency. It robs you. This is your country, and corporations pay next to no tax. And Stemmer has already climbed down, as I've got from my BBC from literally this morning, 9:58 this morning. Ruth Curtis, chief executive of the Living Standards think tank Resolution Foundation, said changes to the welfare bill are a compromise that is, in the end, takes the system to a one the government wanted as more and more recipients apply and the existing recipients roll off. In the interview with the BBC Radio 4 programmes, Curtis suggested that the cost of welfare changes is likely to be around $3 billion. So he's had to shave off $3 billion for the existing people on the welfare check at the moment. And he's had to do that because his rebels will kill him. You know what I'm saying? They know that this bill would be not just terminal for them politically. These are first-time MPs that have just been elected. They don't want to come back to their constituents and say, your welfare's fucked. They're not conservatives. You know, they need the public. The Conservatives can rely on corporations and sleaze to try and ease their way in. These people actually need the people. And if you're telling people on PPI, which is really difficult to get on anyway, this is not some kind of magical, I'm going to claim PPI because I've got a funny hand and it twitches. No, these are people who can't wipe their own body, who can't wash themselves, people who are invalided in fucking chairs. This is not an easy thing to claim by.
Able to go about
daily lives,
of living.
So, I mean, the reality is Stemmer was always going to lose this fight because he's in a party, and these aren't far leftists. Can we get off this fucking idea that these are far leftists? These are decent human beings thinking, he's in a wheelchair. How the fuck is he going to look after himself? We're not talking about money for people who are having a bad mental health day. You know, get the fuck up and go to work. Well, Chris, I'm brutal about that. I'm talking about people actually in wheelchairs. PPI affects people in wheelchairs. It affects real health hazard people who cannot help themselves.
I think that leads into your point quite nicely.
Yeah, it does. That's what I'm drawing from.
Yeah.
The entirety of what's going on involving this Labour rebellion is about decent human beings objecting to abuse, because without the aid of our government currently, 800,000 people, we're talking 800,000 people who have physical disabilities could be worse off in the fucking country we're living in. What is this?
I think they should be working it so it makes them better off.
Yeah. And then there should be a system where they can work in an environment that allows them to work whilst giving the support from their society. I don't have a fucking problem paying tax, making sure someone in a wheelchair, and me and Chris have been paying tax probably longer than most of our viewers have been alive, considering the age group of our viewers. Well, like I said, I have no qualms paying that tax for someone in a wheelchair. I'm sorry. I think that these Tory cunts and their fucking newspapers, left wing. It's not left wing, you motherfucker, caring about human beings.
No, that's completely central. Fuck you on.
Just some parts of the right just do my fucking sweeting.
I'd have no issue if my taxes being used to make sure that the person that isn't able to function like the rest of us is able to turn around
and live as best as life he can.
The best life can, and say, for example,
if he's capable of working, let him have the ability to do so.
Capable of work, especially since the fact we now do work from home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they have obviously all the qualifications and everything else to then turn around and be on the Zoom calls, the telephone conversations, everything.
Absolutely.
From being at their desk at home, in whichever manner that may be. to then serve the public.
Absolutely. I fundamentally believe that the system is built in a combative way. That the PPI, all of that, it's all that you have to prove every time. Why are you in a wheelchair? Because I have cerebral fucking palsy or something like that. You know what I'm saying? What it's mind-bugging. Some of these diseases are uncurable.
Obviously, there naturally needs to be a process to make sure that you're not scamming.
Yeah,
obviously,
but they've driven it beyond a fucking dream
all
now.
All you need to do is turn around and say, right, I need this because of the fact I've got this. Here's the medical proof that you need.
If a doctor says that this person will never walk, that's a good reason to give them aid.
Here's the medical proof that you need to say that I need this assistance, and that should be done dusted. There should be no more further questioning. It should be case, right, so you say you got this, give me the proof. Right, there's solid concrete proof. Thank you very much. Carry on. But I know some get challenged consistently after they prove.
Oh yeah, it's mad. It's absolutely fucking mad. How does somebody wheelchair bound get challenged for their legal right to be part of my society? I told you, motherfuckers, I don't have a problem paying my tax to support somebody in a wheelchair or someone who cannot function without themselves because they're part of my society. We're not talking about people with mental health issues, Chris. You know, those need therapists and then get back to the fucking work. Yeah. That's a short-term therapy work. Problem solved. And if you have my opinion, go back to the gym. You know, just gym should solve most men's problems, in my honest opinion. Anyway, I believe you still have something more.
Yeah, patients dying of sepsis because medics too slow to spot it, warns NHS watchdog.
Fucking hell.
Sepsis is causing thousands of deaths a year, a charity that has said, as the NHS safety watchdog warned that doctors and nurses are too often slow to identify and treat it. The recognition of sepsis remains an urgent and persistent safety risk, despite previous reports highlighting the large number of deaths it's caused when diagnosed too late. According to the Health Service Safety Investigation Body, too often relatives were ignored when there were raised concerns about the condition of a loved one who later died of sepsis. The HSIB said on Thursday it urges NHS trusts and staff in England to learn from mistakes, which the UK Sepsis Trust estimates play a key role in as many as 10,000 avoidable deaths.
Jesus Christ!
Year UK-wide. Sepsis develops when an infection goes untreated and the body's immune response starts to target its own tissue and organs. Doctors refer to that process as organ dysfunction. It causes more deaths than lung cancer and is the second biggest killer in England after heart disease. NHS England says, however, it is very hard to diagnose, as many of its symptoms, such as confusion, breathlessness, and blotchy skin, are also found with other conditions, and there are no single sign or diagnostic tests to identify it. The reports from the HSSIB is the latest in the series from bodies including the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman and the Care Quality Commission to reveal a large number of patients who die each year after NHS staff take too long to diagnose it.
Oh, the billah!
Right, my first thing on that is, if there's currently no way to detect a sepsis, that should be the first milestone.
Yeah. Why the fuck aren't we doing something about that?
Yeah. So the fact, obviously, I know infections can be hard to obviously spot sometimes, but there should be a test, especially since the fact that obviously sepsis is from infections, which could be regarding obviously stab wounds after surgery, if something gets in them, all that sort of stuff. If you know that could be a potential, there should be a test to put in place so you can stop it from coming about.
I know you had to say stabbings, didn't you? I mean, was that just looking at me when you said it? It's like, I'm going to mention this because I know John's history.
No, come on. It's quite sepsis, infection, foreign bodies in. What's the most?
Yeah, but your first two go-to place was stabbings, and you're thinking the Irishman from London. Look, to arm my youths back home, stop stabbing each other. We might lower the sepsis problem.
That'll only be a temporary fix. It'll still rise up again.
Well, hey, if they stop stabbing, the death toll in London will go down. Let's be fair about that. Stabbing is still probably the highest fucking problem in London's death rate as it is. But that's nasty. It's 10,000. Jesus Christ.
There have been initiatives to improve the recognition and timely treatment of sepsis over the last 20 years, yet it has persisted as a safety risk. The fact that it's still an ongoing issue says to me...
20 years. Why haven't we started doing some serious research into sepsis?
Where's the research? Where's the test to indicate that sepsis may be coming about?
No, completely. I mean, I think sepsis is a serious problem from that it needs to be addressed.
I was at risk of it when I had my hernia rot.
Jesus Christ.
I'm just glad I was in fairly decent shape.
No, fucking jeez.
Bounced back like a bouncy ball.
I told you, motherfucker, you got to bury me, not the other way around. You got to carry me down the fucking graveyard, not the other. You're the junior. You got to carry my ass.
I'm much younger than you.
But I got the fucked up lifestyle. That's the problem. We know I'm going first.
Yeah, I'm usually going, you're the reason we're being shot at.
This is not my fault. If anyone's wondering, that's a quote from Bad Boys for Life, where Mike and his partner Larry are getting shot at. And Chris always assumes I'm Mike.
Not assuming you are.
But that's terrifying. 10,000 fucking deaths a year.
10,000 a year due to sepsis, because it isn't.
And they haven't been able to fix it for 20 fucking years.
Yeah.
That needs some serious thing looking at. Remember all that money they're putting into the NHS? We should start putting a little bit
of that straight into that.
Definitely. Definitely. I
thought I'd make people aware. Obviously, I always say if you're ever going into hospital for surgery of any kind, try and make yourself in the best shape possible.
Yeah, best condition you can be,
going into the surgery, because obviously I know some people condition varies depending on the person. Always try and make sure you're in the best condition, especially your immune system.
No, completely. I do have another thing, but we're going to leave on with you because you've got the men's mental health, and we've got about another 10-15 minutes. We're going to go with that.
Good one, yeah. Men's mental health, obviously, globally, men are less likely to be diagnosed with a mental health condition as compared to women. 12.5% compared to the 13.5%, including depressive disorders, 3% compared to 4.5%. But they are much more likely to die by suicide and experience substance misuse disorder. Men's mental health, the only reason I bring it up is because it's obviously the month of it.
Yeah, it is.
And the fact, the one thing that really is starting to piss me the fuck off is why are we getting treated like second-class citizens when it comes to our mental health?
To be fair, because men carry the burden of society, Chris. We are expected to carry the burden of society.
I think it doesn't help with the latest trend online of just disregarding men's mental health entirely.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but we are the bricks that build society.
I can understand. Obviously, we are, as in most cases, the breadwinners, the ones that hold everything up, the ones that put things together, the ones that keep things stable and in control. So naturally, there is pressure with just being
being man. Yeah.
Entirely. I'm sorry to all you feminists that find that offensive, but fuck you. When it comes to mental health, I'm sorry.
The mental health of men.
Kiss my ass, because if we don't maintain our strong appearance and everything else and stay solid,
your society falls apart.
Fucking hope.
Your society falls apart.
Yeah.
To be fair, the mental health of men is something that's not discussed, and this is why I find that and this is one of those conversations. Religious communities do a lot better with this, because religious men and religious communities tend to reinforce support communal behaviour. Being that's one of
the points that will come up.
Ignoring the fact of the actual mental health issue you're suffering. Yeah. If you have a place of worship, regardless of where that worship is, and you go there regularly with your fellow men of worship, there is a comradeship that allows you to hold your burdens together. You know you're not alone. So that it causes a mental reinforcement. Regardless whether you believe in religion or not, religious institutions are known, mental health-wise, for men to be stronger because they are stood by their religious brothers and sisters. And that gives them a reinforcement of the social norms.
This comes into, obviously, one of the main points I want to discuss is why 40% of men won't talk about it. The key findings on this is 77% of men polled have suffered with symptoms of common mental health conditions such as anxiety, stress, or depression. That's 77% have experienced this.
I bet you that poll was for under 30s.
And obviously, this is based on just on the poll. That
No. I would be interested to know the age group because those over 30 are still heavily involved in their religious communities.
40% of men have never spoken to anyone about their mental health.
Chris, this is a safe space.
You already know how I discuss my mental health with you. It's my fist to your face. We don't discuss words, we trade blows. It's with some people it works. I know as long as you got the person which could take it. 29% of those that say they are too embarrassed to speak about it, while 20% say there is a negative stigmata on the issue.
It's huge. There is a massive stigmata, whether it's social media or otherwise. There is. Men don't have the ability to talk about their mental health very easily.
I think that is one of the key issues, if not the main key issue in today's society, of the negative stigmata behind men's mental health.
You see, I look at this from a point of faith. I think men of faith suffer less from this, regardless what faith they are. And I know I don't tend to bring religion into this a lot, but because religious communities have a bonding effect that we have lost because of the digital age.
I see that to me translates into support.
Yeah. So, of course.
Support can come in various forms. Obviously, your religion, your faith, family, friends, gym community.
To be fair, friends are not necessarily guaranteed because if you don't know someone's mental health.
I should say family, friends, not exactly the main routes, but the R route for some people. Yeah. Gym communities, not necessarily speaking to them about your condition, but just the fact that you've got somewhere to go.
Yeah.
In order to release the stress is a key.
I fundamentally find that the gyms are brilliant at dealing with things like stress, because if you're working out, you're pounding your problems into the weights, into the rhythm, into
the release is going out of your body
and the endorphins that are coming in are benefiting you as you're feeling more confident about what you're doing. Fundamentally, I do believe that these are problems that can be solved by more physical activity, more connectiveness in human society, less social media, less reliance on social media, and more religious community. I mean, I'm still a very big defender of go to church. To the Britons, go to fucking church. Spend time with your local religious community. If you're alone, if you don't have a good group of friends, and so like you feel alone, go to a religious institution, because it will give you the confidence, mental boost, and social interaction, even if you don't believe in it.
So for the ones which don't fancy going to the religious side of things, go to some sort of group.
Yeah, absolutely.
It could be gym, it could be a book club, could be chess club, whatever your interest sparks in.
Please go and speak to people, sit down with people, be around people.
Speak to them about, obviously, what
the issues. No, of course not.
Just go there and interact. The interaction alone
will alleviate some of your stress. So human beings are social creatures. We are built, engineered, designed as collectives. We are not supposed to be individuals. The idea that you could live on a mountain on your own is an absolute madness. It's a fantasy. Humans are incredible.
Depends on the person.
Yeah, that's not a normal person though, Chris. We as humans are no different from our.
Yeah, but hang on. There's always that.
They're individual. That's an individual, not a group. Mate.
There's always the one which can turn around and live on their own. They're extremely rare.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lie.
Because I'm talking about, when I say alone, I don't mean that you have connection with people. I mean isolation. Living on a desert island can drive people fucking crazy. Let us be very, very clear about that. It's a crazy in effect. It has a mental...
So, yeah, people live on their own still have interaction of some sort.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're not talking about people who have connection through social media or through phones or for friends and family visiting around. We are talking about people who are in pure isolation. Humans were not designed for pure isolation. We are a social race. So even if those who have social anxiety, they still have some form of interaction with other humans.
Usually family members.
Yeah, family members or close friends that they've built up over the time.
I say the biggest cause of mental health issues in men's lives, going by obviously the poll, 32% is work. 31 closely followed only by a percent is finances at 31 and the health at 23. That's the top three.
You can solve these problems by building more gyms, by having a living wage for all of the British people, if we're talking from a British point of view.
Yeah.
And by giving men the ability to control their finances better, by teaching finances in schools. There you are, solve the problem. And it all stems from sort the fucking tax out.
I was going to say, sort tax system out, which will then alleviate
a lot of the stress, because the tax system that me and Chris are always talking about actually lowers your individual tax. We would be giving you tax back because we would be shifting that burden back up the fucking line where it belongs.
Yeah, we'll be dropping the tax rate.
Yeah, normal Britain taxpayer.
For the taxpayer, the tax rate will drop.
And corporations would have to now foot their fucking fair share.
Yeah. Corporations were getting stung heavily. Well, not heavily, fairly. 40% of men polled said it would take thoughts of suicide or self-harm to compel them to get professional help. That's a scary thought, and also the reason why suicide rates in men are absolutely disgusting.
We're the highest rate of suicides in the country, mate. In most parts of the world, too.
Yeah, that's just the key findings of why men don't speak about, obviously, their mental health. And the big question I want to ask you guys, not just Mr. John here, you guys as well that watch us, why are men getting such backlash online because of awareness being made about their mental health?
Fourth wave feminists, those scummy, dirty bitches online. Let's call it what it is. No, they are, because they are. I have three female friends who are real world feminists. I would be lying. No, this is Western society, and my Muslim brothers and sisters like female friends. I work colleagues, all right. I have three female work colleagues who are genuine feminists who care about the feminist ideology, and they despise fourth wave online feminism. Absolutely despise it, Chris. These are girls that have said it is vile, it is man-hating, and it is not what represents us. So let us be very, very clear. Genuine feminists who are caring about women's rights, women's needs, women's societies are not these online nutcases who are man-haters, who are misandrists. Let's be quite frank.
The ones that are going to be old 1890s with a bunch of cats sat in their own flat.
Yeah, they're the miserable fucking crew. The ones who you know who the ones are. They're so butters that they will never, ever, ever get fucking laid. Because that's what it is. These evil feminists are just fucking ugly, and they know that they're never going to get a man. And I'm sorry, but we need to start saying it like that, like they're butters. But the reality is that the mental health of men online is being attacked by these hateful, nasty misandrists who represent a tiny minority of the fourth wave feminist movement that's in general. And most fourth wave feminists on the ground, people who talk about being feminists, can't stand them. That's a very pointable point I want to make. This is not a normal part of the social movement that some women are prescribed to, and not all women prescribe to this. Less than 30% of Britain call themselves feminists. It tends to be the younger generation, but by the time they reach their 30s, the ideology of feminism drops out. Feminism has an age gap. It has an age time frame.
That could be due to
indoctrination.
And
feminism does not live, as an example.
I'm trying to think of the right word I'm trying to come up with here. Mental integrity.
Yeah. Feminism does not exist without continual universal reinforcement. It does not. This is one of those conversations I've had with one of my female work colleagues. I said to her, your ideology dies when it's left on its own.
Or when they have a family.
No. Even when they have family, it dies if it's not reinforced. This is one of the fundamental flaws of feminism as a movement.
Hence the reason why I say it tends to die out when they have families.
Yeah.
Because of the fact how many
You can't be...
how many of this new wave feminism actually have families?
Oh, there's quite a few. You'd be very surprised. Talking to those 3 particular feminists, 2 of them want kids.
Not on what the
they're part of that.
The fourth wave.
They are.
Yeah.
That's why you need to make a distinction, Chris, between online fourth wave feminism and normal fourth wave feminism. There are fourth wave feminists who generally the online are evil. Everyone says it.
The online ones. How many of them actually have families? Supportive, constructive families that are stable and consistent.
I think it's more the fact that they don't have their daddy in their life.
Unfortunately, as much as you laugh about that, I think that may actually be
the point. It is. It's the point. They have daddy issues. With that beautiful position on men's mental health, I think that's a great point to end.
Yeah.
We will talk about the Iran-Israeli conflict and the Ayatollah's response involving us probably next session. I might not, because I mean it's generally quite public news. I don't genuinely think that the American bombings that went on in Iran have done really any effect. The intel that I can read, the material I can read, has done very little, and as if anything, has embarrassed the West by America's bombs being dragged in by Israel. President Trump, I don't think you'll ever see this, but if your supporters do, stay the fuck out. Follow your America First policy. Stay the fuck out. It's not our fight. The West does not need to be involved. Anyway, it's reached on for this hour. I think we've done really, really well. I like the fact we mostly ended on a positive note on mental health. Men, please go and get help. Talk to friends and family. Do not be afraid to speak about this stuff.
I know. I've heard it online and I've heard it from friends. We will gladly turn around and rather hear your problems if you're that down, and you cry on our shoulder, then we carry your coffin.
Yeah. You're carrying mine anyway.
I'm carrying this regardless. I should say I'm dragging it, but there you go.
As always, this has been your Blue Collars Workers. We talk about the things that we think are important for Britain and society in general. This is your voice, your nation. I'm John, Sean, or Yeka, depends what you're asking.
I'm Chris. Hope you have a smashing day.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Have a lovely day.